Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of New Haven's main tower, watching the sunrise paint the sky orange and purple. The sight never got old, even after 15 years on this world. Below him, the colony stretched out in neat rows of white buildings and green fields. 50,000 people called this place home now. The farming district hummed with morning activity. Bill Henderson was already in his fields, checking the corn that would feed half the colony this winter. His wife Lisa packed lunch for their twin daughters, Amy and Beth, who would spend the day at the school near the river. Normal families living normal lives, far from Earth's crowded cities and endless wars. Jake's comm unit beeped. "Morning report." "Sir," came the voice of his assistant, Carol Stevens. "All systems running smooth. The new water treatment plant is working better than expected." "Good news for once," Jake said. He had been colony administrator since the beginning, watching New Haven grow from a few prefab shelters to a real city. The terraforming was almost complete. In another 5 years, people could walk outside without breathing masks. Dr. Elena Rodriguez was already in her lab, studying soil samples from the northern continent. She had discovered 3 new types of bacteria that helped crops grow faster in the alien soil. Her research would help other human colonies across this part of space. The morning felt peaceful. Too peaceful, as Jake would later remember. Captain Ryan Brooks sat in the orbital defense station, drinking his 3rd cup of coffee and reading reports from Earth. Trade ships came and went every few weeks, bringing news and supplies. The defense station had never fired its weapons except in training exercises. There had never been a reason. The sensors picked up the incoming ships at 0847 local time. "Sir, we have contacts," said sensor operator Danny Foster, his voice tight with surprise. 5 large vessels coming in fast from the outer system. Ryan moved to the main display. The ships were huge, bigger than anything in the human fleet. Their design was alien, all sharp angles and dark metal. He had never seen anything like them. "Try to make contact," Ryan ordered. "Standard greeting protocols." Danny worked his controls. "Broadcasting on all frequencies, sir." No response. The alien ships continued their approach. They moved in perfect formation like predators closing on prey. Ryan felt ice in his stomach. "Send a message to the colony," he said. "Tell Jake we have unknown visitors." Down on the planet, Jake received the message while reviewing crop reports. Unknown visitors meant first contact with an alien species. It should have been exciting. Instead, something felt wrong. "Elena, get to the communications center," he told Dr. Rodriguez over the comm. "We might need a xenobiologist." Elena dropped her samples and ran. As the colony's expert on alien life, she would help with any first contact situation. She had studied the few known alien species for years, dreaming of this moment. The alien ships reached orbit without responding to any communications. They took positions around the planet, surrounding it completely. Still no word from them. "Sir," Danny's voice was shaking now. "They're powering weapons." Ryan stared at the display. The alien ships were targeting the orbital station and the colony below. There was no warning, no demand for surrender. They simply prepared to fire. "Red alert," Ryan shouted. "All hands to battle stations. Activate planetary shields." The defense station had shields designed to stop asteroids and small attacks. The colony below had basic protection systems. Nothing built for real war. The aliens fired. The orbital station died in seconds. Ryan barely had time to send a final message before the energy beams tore through the hull. The explosion lit up the sky over New Haven like a second sun. On the planet, air raid sirens wailed across the colony. People ran from their homes and jobs, looking up at the burning wreckage falling from orbit. The alien ships descended through the atmosphere like dark angels. Jake stood in the emergency command center, watching his world die on the monitors. The aliens landed troops in the farming district first. The soldiers were tall and thin, wearing black armor that seemed to absorb light. They carried weapons that fired beams of pure energy. Bill Henderson tried to protect his family. He grabbed an old hunting rifle and stood in his doorway as the alien soldiers approached his farm. The weapon was useless against their armor. Lisa pushed Amy and Beth behind her as the energy beams cut down their father. The aliens killed without mercy. They shot anyone who moved, anyone who ran, anyone who tried to hide. Men, women, children, elderly people in care homes. No one was spared. Dr. Rodriguez made it to the communications center as the alien ground forces surrounded the main settlement. She helped Lisa Chang, the communications officer, try to send a distress signal to Earth. "The transmitter is damaged," Lisa said, working frantically at her controls. "I can only reach the backup satellite." "Do it," Elena said. "Someone has to know what happened here." Outside, the sounds of battle grew closer. Energy weapons crackled through the air. People screamed and died in the streets Jake had helped build. The aliens brought something else with them. As their ship settled over the colony, they released a cloud of gas into the atmosphere. The cloud was pale green and spread quickly on the wind. Elena watched the readings on her scanner and felt her heart stop. "It's a biological weapon," she whispered, "designed to target human DNA." The gas reached the communications center. Lisa managed to upload a data packet to the hidden satellite as the poison entered her lungs. Her last words went out with the signal. "They came in silence, and now we join it. Remember us." Elena collapsed beside her, the scanner falling from her hands. Outside, the screaming stopped. The colony grew quiet. The alien commander stood on the highest tower, looking down at the dead city. Warlord Zekmor had led purification, operations on dozens of worlds. Humans were just another inferior species, removed from a planet that deserved better inhabitants. "Log the cleansing is complete," he told his aide. Typical resistance from primitive beings. They fought like animals instead of accepting their fate with dignity. The Veltar soldiers loaded their equipment and prepared to leave. In 6 hours, they had killed every human on New Haven. The operation was routine, efficient, and thorough. The ships lifted off, leaving behind empty buildings and silent streets. The wind blew through the farming district where Bill Henderson's crops still grew in neat rows. His house stood empty, the front door still open where he had made his last stand. High above the planet, a small satellite continued its orbit, carrying Lisa Chang's final message toward Earth. The journey would take 3 months. By then, the only trace of New Haven's 50,000 people would be that single data packet, traveling through the dark between stars. The Veltar fleet jumped to hyperspace, already planning their next purification. They left behind a world of silence, not knowing that silence would become their doom. Admiral Patricia Kane sat in her office on Luna Base, reviewing routine fleet reports when the priority message arrived. 3 months had passed since New Haven went silent. Trade ships reported no response from the colony, but equipment failures were common on frontier worlds. The hidden satellite's data packet changed everything. Patricia watched the footage with growing horror. The alien ships arriving without warning. The orbital defense station exploding in seconds. Ground troops systematically hunting down families in their homes. The biological weapon spreading death across the entire colony. She called President Marcus Webb immediately. "Sir, we need to meet. Priority Alpha, bring Secretary Davis." 2 hours later, they sat in the secure briefing room beneath the presidential complex in Geneva. The room was designed to survive nuclear war. Today it felt too small to contain the rage building inside 3 of Earth's most powerful leaders. "How many?" President Webb asked, his voice quiet and controlled. 50,000 confirmed dead, Patricia said. "Total extinction of the colony, no survivors found." Secretary of Defense Helen Davis reviewed the technical data. The biological weapon was specifically designed to kill humans. This wasn't random violence. It was planned genocide. Dr. Samuel Clark, Earth's leading expert on alien psychology, had spent weeks studying the footage. He joined the meeting by secure video link from his laboratory on Mars. The aliens showed no attempt at communication, he reported. No warnings, no demands for surrender. They treated the colonists like animals to be exterminated. Based on their behavior patterns, I believe this is standard procedure for them. President Webb leaned back in his chair. He had led Earth through trade wars and political crises, but this was different. This was an attack on the human species itself. "What do we know about these aliens?" he asked. Commander Nick Parker, Earth's top intelligence officer pulled up. A holographic display. We call them the Veltar hegemony. Our deep space monitoring stations have tracked their expansion for the past 50 years. They control over 200 star systems. The display showed a map of known space. A red area marked Veltar territory, spreading like a cancer across dozens of worlds. They've done this before, Nick continued. 17 other species have gone extinct in systems they've conquered. We always assumed it was natural expansion and resource competition. Now we know better. Helen Davis studied the tactical data. What kind of military force are we looking at? Approximately 3,000. Ships of various sizes, Nick said. Advanced technology superior to ours in most areas. They've never faced serious resistance because they choose victims who can't fight back. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Earth faced an enemy that had spent centuries perfecting genocide, an enemy that saw humans as nothing, more than vermin to be exterminated. Options? President Webb asked. Patricia had been waiting for this question. We have two choices, sir. We can hope they stop with New Haven and prepare our defenses, or we can make them pay for what they did. Recommendations? They murdered 50,000 civilians, including children. They used biological weapons designed specifically to kill our species. In my opinion, sir, this is an act of war against all humanity. Helen Davis nodded. I agree. If we don't respond, they'll see us as weak. New Haven was just the beginning. President Webb looked at each of them. In turn, these people had advised him through 5 years of peace and prosperity. Now they were asking him to authorize humanity's first interstellar war. What would a military response look like, he asked. Patricia had been planning since she first saw the footage. We activate Protocol Omega, full military mobilization. Convert all industrial capacity to war production. Build the largest fleet in human history. Protocol Omega had been developed during the Mars Rebellion, designed for threats to human civilization itself. It had never been used. Until now. How long would it take? Webb asked. 18 months to build the fleet. 6 months to reach Veltar space. Call it 2 years total. The president considered this. 2 years of preparation for a war that might destroy human civilization. But the alternative was waiting for the next colony ship to go silent. Do it, he said quietly. Authorize Protocol Omega. The mobilization began within hours. Across the solar system, industrial complexes received new orders. Shipyards that built cargo vessels retooled for warships. Mining operations on asteroids doubled their output. Research facilities that studied peaceful technologies turned to weapons development. General Frank Morrison commanded the military buildup from his headquarters on Mars. He had lost his younger brother Jake in the New Haven attack, along with Jake's wife and children. The loss gave him a personal stake in the coming war. They wanted to make us extinct, he told his staff during their first planning meeting. Instead, they've made themselves a target. The general's words spread through the military ranks. Soldiers and officers who had never seen combat trained with new intensity. The enemy had made the war personal by targeting civilians. Dr. Amy Watson led the weapons development program from her laboratory in Earth orbit. She had studied Veltar technology from the New Haven footage, looking for weaknesses to exploit. Their ships use quantum field generators for both propulsion and defense, she explained to the weapons team. If we can disrupt those fields, their technology becomes useless. The breakthrough came 6 months into the mobilization. Dr. Watson's team developed quantum torpedoes that could collapse Veltar energy fields on impact. The weapons turned the aliens' advanced technology into a weakness. Meanwhile, Dr. Carol Stevens interviewed the few human survivors found on other worlds the Veltar had attacked. Most were hiding in deep shelters or had escaped in damaged ships. Their stories painted a picture of systematic extermination across dozens of colonies. They don't take prisoners, one survivor reported. They don't negotiate or make demands, they just kill everyone and move on to the next world. The testimonies strengthened Earth's resolve. This wasn't a territorial dispute or resource conflict. It was a war for survival against an enemy that saw genocide as routine policy. Admiral Kane oversaw the fleet construction from her command ship, the newly built UCS Retribution. The vessel was the largest ever constructed by humans, armed with quantum weapons and protected by experimental shield technology. Around her, the fleet took shape. Battleships designed for ship-to-ship combat, carriers loaded with fighter craft, support vessels packed with marines and assault equipment. Every ship carried one message: humanity would not go quietly into extinction. The fleet grew beyond original projections. Colonies across human space contributed ships and personnel. Even civilian corporations donated resources, driven by images of dead families on New Haven. By the end of the first year, Earth commanded over 3,000 warships. The mobilization had transformed human civilization from a peaceful trading network into a military machine focused on one goal: justice for New Haven. They chose to make this personal, General Morrison said during a staff meeting. They targeted our families, our children, our future. Now they'll learn what happens when you try to make humans extinct. Intelligence reports confirmed the Veltar had no idea what was coming. Their long-range sensors showed increased human activity, but they dismissed it as typical primitive response to threat. They had seen other species mobilize before attacking. All had failed. Dr. Watson's team made another breakthrough in the final months of preparation. They developed biological weapons based on Veltar DNA samples recovered from New Haven. The weapons would target only Veltar physiology, leaving other species unharmed. An eye for an eye, Admiral Kane said when she reviewed the weapons specs. They used biology against us. Now we'll use it against them. The fleet's mission planning was complete. Phase 1 would target Veltar border worlds, cutting their supply lines and gathering intelligence. Phase 2 would strike at their industrial centers, crippling their ability to wage war. Phase 3 would assault their home system, forcing surrender or destruction. President Webb addressed the fleet commanders in a final meeting before departure. The briefing room contained the best military minds humanity had produced, unified by a single purpose. 2 years ago, they thought they were hunting defenseless colonists, he said. Today, they're about to learn the difference between humans at peace and humans at war. Admiral Kane stood at the podium, looking at faces that showed no doubt, no hesitation. The enemy had awakened something in humanity that they didn't understand, something that would destroy their empire. They wanted silence, she said, repeating General Morrison's famous words. Now they'll drown in the blood of their choice. The fleet departed Sol system on the 2nd anniversary of New Haven's fall. 3,000 ships carrying humanity's response to genocide. Behind them, Earth's factories continued building more vessels, more weapons, more tools of war. The Veltar had made a simple mistake. They had confused peaceful with weak and civilized with defenseless. Soon they would learn that humanity's greatest strength wasn't technology or numbers. It was memory, and humans never forgot their dead. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Veltar territory, exactly 2 years after New Haven died. Admiral Patricia Kane stood on the bridge of the UCS Retribution, watching 3,000 human warships spread across space in perfect formation. All ships report ready for combat, her communications officer announced. Fleet weapons are charged and shields are active. Patricia nodded. The Veltar had no idea what was coming. Their border sensors would detect the human fleet in minutes, but by then it would be too late. Signal the fleet, she ordered. Begin Operation Silent Justice. Captain Danny Foster commanded the stealth division from his ship, the UCS Shadow. His vessels were designed for reconnaissance and infiltration, equipped with cloaking technology reverse-engineered from captured Veltar equipment. Stealth ships, move to positions, Danny broadcast on the secure channel. Remember, we want intelligence before we start the shooting. The stealth ships vanished from sensors as their cloaking systems engaged. They moved ahead of the main fleet, approaching Veltar installations to gather data on enemy defenses and troop movements. Danny's ship reached the first Veltar outpost within hours. The station orbited a dead world that had once supported life. According to intelligence reports, the Veltar had purified this system 40 years ago, eliminating a species called the Morketh. Scanning the station, his sensor operator reported. Minimal defenses. They're not expecting trouble. Danny studied the readings. The Veltar had grown lazy after centuries of easy victories. Their border stations relied on automated systems instead of alert crews. Perfect targets for what came next. Commander Beth Collins led the Cyber Warfare Division from her position, aboard the UCS Phantom. Her team had spent months studying Veltar communication protocols, learning to hack their networks. Phantom to all stealth units, she broadcast. Beginning network infiltration. Stand by for intelligence download. Beth's hackers penetrated Veltar systems within minutes. The aliens had never faced an enemy capable of digital warfare. Their security was designed to keep their own people in line, not to stop outside attacks. The intelligence download revealed the full scope of Veltar expansion. Star maps showed the locations of purified worlds and the species that had died on them. Military records detailed the systematic extermination of 17 civilizations over the past 1,000 years. My God, Beth whispered as she read the files. They've killed billions of intelligent beings. The data confirmed Dr. Clark's analysis. The Veltar saw genocide as natural policy, the right of superior species to eliminate inferior ones. They had industrialized extinction, turning mass murder into routine procedure. Admiral Kane received the intelligence reports as the main fleet approached the first Veltar border world. The planet supported 50 million aliens living in massive cities connected by transport networks. Military bases dotted the surface, but most of the population was civilian. Orders, Admiral? Asked General Morrison, who commanded the Marine Assault Forces. Patricia studied the tactical display. The Veltar had never shown mercy to human civilians. Every man, woman, and child on New Haven had died. The easy response would be to return the favor. Target military installations only, she decided. Civilian areas are off limits unless they contain strategic targets. Some of her officers looked surprised. The enemy had committed genocide against humans, but Patricia refused to become like them. Humanity would win this war without abandoning its principles. The attack began with quantum torpedoes striking Veltar military bases. The weapons Dr. Watson had developed proved devastatingly effective, collapsing alien shield systems and crippling their defenses within minutes. Veltar fighters launched to intercept the human fleet, but they were outnumbered 10-1. Human pilots had trained for years for this moment, flying ships designed specifically to counter Veltar tactics. Lieutenant Commander Alex Turner led a squadron of interceptors against the alien fighters. Remember your training, he told his pilots. They've never faced real opposition. Show them what human pilots can do. The space battle was over in hours. Veltar ships exploded by the dozen as human weapons found their targets. The aliens had superior individual technology, but humanity had superior numbers, tactics, and motivation. On the planet below, Veltar military commanders tried to organize resistance. They sent desperate messages to their fleet command, reporting attacks by unknown forces using advanced weapons. Major Kate Thompson led the first human ground assault, targeting the main military command center. Her Marines moved with precision, avoiding civilian areas while striking at strategic targets. Resistance is lighter than expected, she reported to General Morrison. The enemy wasn't prepared for this kind of attack. The Veltar ground forces had never fought an enemy with comparable technology. Their tactics assumed overwhelming superiority against primitive opponents. Against trained human soldiers using equal weapons, they collapsed quickly. The planetary government fell within 12 hours. Human forces captured the military leadership alive, along with detailed records of Veltar military operations across their empire. Admiral Kane broadcast a message to the surviving Veltar civilians, using their own communication networks. The transmission showed footage from New Haven, including the systematic murder of human families. Your military committed genocide against innocent people, her recorded message stated. We are here for justice, not revenge. Surrender your war criminals and this ends peacefully. The effect on Veltar society was immediate and devastating. Most civilians had never seen footage of their military's purification operations. The government had told them that conquered species simply relocated to other worlds. Riots broke out in major cities as Veltar citizens demanded explanations from their leaders. Some refused to believe the footage was real. Others began questioning everything their government had told them about the Empire's expansion. Captain Rose Parker commanded the human fleet's second wave, targeting Veltar industrial worlds. Her ships carried specialized weapons designed to disable factories and shipyards without destroying entire cities. Industrial targets only, she reminded her captains. We're here to stop their war machine, not their people. The attacks crippled Veltar military production within weeks. Shipyards that had built invasion fleets for centuries went silent. Weapons factories stopped producing the tools of genocide. Dr. Watson's biological weapons proved equally effective. The toxins targeted only Veltar military personnel, leaving civilians unharmed. Unlike the weapon used on New Haven, these were precise surgical strikes rather than mass murder. Warlord Zekmor, the commander who had ordered New Haven's destruction, received reports of the human advance from his fortress on the industrial world of Velkorvac. Each message brought worse news. How many ships do they have? He demanded from his intelligence officer. Reports vary, sir. Estimates range from 2,000 to 5,000 vessels, all using unknown technology. Zekmor had commanded purification fleets for 50 years. He had never faced an enemy capable of this level of coordination and firepower. The humans were supposed to be primitives, easily defeated by superior Veltar technology. Send word to Fleet Command, he ordered. Request immediate reinforcement of all border systems. The message never reached its destination. Commander Collins's cyber warfare teams had taken control of the Veltar communication network, filtering messages and spreading disinformation throughout their military structure. Human infiltration teams, led by Agent Linda Gray, used captured Veltar equipment to move freely through enemy installations. The aliens had never developed security procedures against shape-shifting technology, making infiltration almost effortless. Linda's team penetrated the main Veltar fleet base at Velmarath, gathering intelligence on their remaining military assets. The base housed over 500 warships, but most were older designs, no match for human quantum weapons. Security is minimal, Linda reported to Admiral Kane. They're completely unprepared for this kind of warfare. The human advance continued, across 12 Veltar systems, systematically dismantling their military infrastructure. Each victory brought new intelligence about the enemy's capabilities and revealed the full scope of their genocidal campaigns. Dr. Stevens's psychological warfare teams broadcast testimony from genocide survivors across the Veltar communication network. The voices of extinct species spoke from beyond the grave, describing their final moments as Veltar forces hunted them down. The psychological impact was devastating. Veltar military morale collapsed as soldiers learned the true purpose of their purification campaigns. Some units surrendered without fighting. Others deserted their posts entirely. Admiral Kane addressed the human fleet as they prepared for the final assault on Veltar core systems. Her ships had traveled farther from Earth than any human force in history, carrying justice across the stars. 2 years ago they tried to make us extinct, she told her captains. They thought silence was weakness. Instead, our silence became their doom. The fleet moved deeper into Veltar space, leaving liberated worlds in their wake. On each conquered planet, human forces established temporary governments and began documenting Veltar war crimes for future tribunals. The aliens who had spent centuries perfecting genocide now faced their own extinction. Not from biological weapons or systematic murder, but the human fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Velkorvac system, like a steel storm. Plummetors, 1,000 ships spread across space in attack formation, their weapons charged and shields glowing with barely contained energy. Admiral Patricia Kane stood on the bridge of the UCS Retribution, watching the Veltar capital world grow larger on the main screen. All ships report ready for final assault, her communications officer announced. Marine assault teams are standing by for planetary invasion. Patricia studied the tactical display showing Veltar defenses. The enemy had concentrated their remaining fleet around their homeworld, nearly 800 ships arranged in defensive shells around the planet. It was the largest force they had assembled during the entire war. "Signal General Morrison," she ordered. "Tell him his target is waiting." General Frank Morrison commanded the ground assault from his flagship, the UCS Vengeance. 6 months of conquering Veltar worlds had taught his Marines exactly how to fight the enemy. They moved fast, hit hard, and showed more mercy than the aliens had ever earned. "Marines, listen up," Frank broadcast to his assault forces. "That planet down there is where they planned every genocide for the past 1,000 years. Today we shut them down forever." Colonel Jim Hayes led the first wave of ground forces, his transport ships loaded with equipment designed for urban warfare. Intelligence reports showed most of the planet's military leadership had gathered in the capital city, making them easy targets for capture. "Remember the mission," he told his officers. "We want prisoners, not corpses. These war criminals are going to face trial for what they did." The space battle began when Veltar ships opened fire on the approaching human fleet. Their energy weapons lit up space with deadly light, but human shields held against the assault. Dr. Watson's technology proved superior to anything the aliens could deploy. Captain Rose Parker commanded the human battleship division, leading the charge against the enemy's main fleet. Her ships fired quantum torpedoes in coordinated salvos, each weapon capable of crippling a Veltar cruiser with a single hit. "Target their command ships first," she ordered her captains. "Cut off their coordination and the rest will fall apart." Veltar fought with desperate fury, knowing this was their last stand. But desperation couldn't overcome the technological and numerical advantages the humans had built during 2 years of preparation. Human fighter squadrons, led by Commander Alex Turner, swept through the enemy formations like deadly swarms. The pilots had trained for this moment since the war began, flying ships designed to exploit every weakness in Veltar technology. "They're breaking formation," Alex reported as enemy ships scattered under the human assault. "Looks like some of them are trying to run." "Let them go," Admiral Kane replied. "We're here for their leadership, not their cowards." On the planet below, Warlord Zekmor watched his fleet die from the command center built deep beneath the capital city. Each explosion on the orbital display represented years of construction and resources. The humans were destroying his empire ship by ship. "Sir, we're receiving surrender requests from multiple fleet elements," his communications officer reported. Zekmor considered the situation. He had spent 50 years building his reputation as the hegemony's most effective purification commander. Surrender would mean capture, trial, and probably execution. But continuing to fight meant the destruction of every remaining Veltar ship. "Ignore the surrender requests," he decided. "All units will fight to the death. The hegemony does not yield to inferior species." The order never reached most of his fleet. Commander Beth Collins's cyber warfare teams had infiltrated every Veltar communication network months ago. Instead of Zekmor's orders, his ships received edited messages encouraging surrender. Human boarding parties, led by specialists like Lieutenant Kate Thompson, captured Veltar vessels whose crews had given up fighting. The prisoners were treated, according to interstellar law, far better than the Veltar had ever treated their victims. "Medical teams to the prison ships," Kate ordered as another Veltar cruiser surrendered. "Make sure the prisoners are properly cared for." The space battle ended within hours as the last Veltar ships either surrendered or exploded under human fire. The orbital defenses fell to bombardment from Admiral Kane's battleships. The way was clear for ground assault. General Morrison's Marines landed in dropships that cut through the planet's atmosphere like falling stars. The Veltar had prepared ground defenses, but they were designed to fight primitive enemies with inferior weapons. Human soldiers moved through the capital city with surgical precision. They avoided civilian areas while striking directly at military targets. Advanced scanning equipment identified enemy commanders by their biological signatures. Major Linda Gray led a special forces team deep into the government district, following intelligence reports about a hidden command bunker. Her soldiers used captured Veltar equipment to pass through security checkpoints without triggering alarms. "Target building identified," she reported to Colonel Hayes. "Multiple high-value targets inside. Beginning infiltration." The bunker was supposed to be impregnable, protected by energy shields and automated defenses. But human engineers had studied Veltar technology for 2 years, learning to turn their own systems against them. Zekmore was meeting with his surviving commanders when alarms began sounding throughout the facility. Security monitors showed human soldiers moving through corridors that should have been impossible to reach. "How did they get past our defenses?" demanded General Kolvar, his second in command. "The same way they got past everything else," Zekmore replied bitterly. "They're better than we thought." The warlord had commanded purification operations against 17 species. He had seen civilizations fall before superior Veltar technology and tactics. Now he was experiencing the same collapse from the other side. Major Gray's team reached the command center as Veltar guards tried to organize resistance. The battle was brief and one-sided. Human weapons and tactics proved superior to everything the enemy could deploy. "Warlord Zekmore," Linda announced as her soldiers surrounded the alien commanders. "You are under arrest for crimes against humanity and genocide against multiple species." The warlord looked at the human soldiers pointing weapons at his head. They wore advanced armor and carried equipment he didn't recognize. After 50 years of conquest, he was finally facing opponents who matched his own capabilities. "You cannot judge me," he said in broken English. "I followed the natural law. The strong eliminate the weak. It is the way of the universe." "Tell that to the families you murdered on New Haven," Linda replied. "You're going to face trial for every life you took." Zekmore expected to be executed on the spot. Instead, the humans secured him and his commanders with restraints designed to hold them safely. Even now, facing the architect of their species' greatest tragedy, they showed more mercy than he had ever given. Similar scenes played out across the capital city as human forces captured Veltar military leadership. Admiral Kane had given strict orders. War criminals would be taken alive to face justice. Summary execution was not an option. Dr. Carol Stevens accompanied the arrest teams, documenting each capture for the war crimes tribunals that would follow. Her psychological warfare broadcast had prepared the galaxy for this moment, when the perpetrators of genocide would finally answer for their actions. "We have them all," she reported to Admiral Kane as the final arrests were completed. "Every commander involved in the purification campaigns, the trials can begin." The capital city fell completely within 12 hours of the first landing. Veltar resistance collapsed as word spread that their leadership had been captured alive. Civilian populations who had supported the war effort suddenly found themselves facing human occupation forces, but the occupation was unlike anything the Veltar had ever experienced. Human soldiers distributed food and medical supplies to civilian populations. They protected alien families from revenge attacks and maintained essential services. Admiral Kane established her headquarters in the former Veltar Command Center, a massive complex that had coordinated genocide across hundreds of worlds. Now it would serve as the center for post-war reconstruction. "Send word to Earth," she ordered her communications officer. "The Veltar hegemony has surrendered unconditionally. All war crime suspects are in custody." President Webb received the message 18 hours later, during an emergency session of the Global Council. The war that had consumed human resources for 2 years was finally over. "Total victory," he announced to the assembled representatives. "The enemy has been defeated and their leadership captured. Justice for New Haven is at hand." Back in Veltar space, human occupation forces began the complex process of documenting alien war crimes. Every purified world was investigated. Every genocide was catalogued. The evidence would ensure that no one could deny what had happened. Warlord Zekmore sat in his prison cell, reviewing the reports his human captors had provided. Files describing every species the Veltar had eliminated, complete with images of the final moments before extinction. For the first time in his career, he was forced to see his victims as individuals rather than. Judge Helen Martinez entered the great hall that had once served as the Veltar High Command Center. The massive chamber now hosted the largest war crimes tribunal in galactic history. Representatives from 37 surviving species filled the observer galleries, each one seeking justice for genocide attempts against their people. The defendants sat in secure enclosures, their restraints designed to hold them safely without causing unnecessary pain. Warlord Zekmor occupied the central position, flanked by his subordinate commanders who had carried out purification operations across hundreds of worlds. "This tribunal is now in session," Judge Martinez announced. "We are here to determine guilt or innocence in the systematic extermination of intelligent species across 17 star systems." Dr. Carol Stevens served as chief prosecutor, presenting evidence gathered from 2 years of investigation. Her team had documented every genocide, every massacre, every act of systematic extermination the Veltar had committed over the past millennium. "The evidence will show," she told the tribunal, "that these defendants planned and executed the complete extermination of over 30 billion intelligent beings. They did so not in the heat of battle, but as calculated policy designed to clear worlds for Veltar colonization." The first witness was Dr. Peter Johnson, a human archaeologist who had spent months studying the ruins of purified worlds. His testimony described civilizations that had existed for thousands of years, wiped out in days by Veltar biological weapons. "On the world designated as Kepler 438b, he reported, "we found evidence of an advanced civilization called the Morketh. They had developed spaceflight, created works of art, built cities that housed millions of people. The Veltar eliminated them completely in 2387. Dr. Johnson presented holographic displays showing Morketh artwork, architecture, and technology. The tribunal watched in silence as evidence of a dead civilization filled the chamber. "How do we know the Veltar were responsible?" asked one of the alien judges. "We found Veltar military records in their archives," Johnson replied. "Complete documentation of the purification operation, including biological weapon deployment patterns and casualty reports." Similar testimony continued for weeks as prosecutors presented evidence of 17 genocides. Each extinct species was given a voice through the artifacts and records they had left behind. The Veltar had been thorough in their extermination, but they had also been meticulous in their documentation. Zekmor listened to the testimony without emotion, his alien features showing no sign of remorse or regret. When called to testify in his own defense, his words shocked even the experienced judges. "I did what nature requires," he stated. "The strong eliminate the weak. We gave these inferior species a quick death instead of slow extinction through competition. We were merciful." "You consider genocide merciful?" Judge Martinez asked. "I consider it natural law. The Veltar evolved beyond the need for such weak emotions as mercy. We acted according to biological imperative." The courtroom fell silent as the full scope of Veltar thinking became clear. They had not committed genocide out of hatred or fear. They had done it because they believed it was the natural order of the universe. Dr. Samuel Clark, the human xenopsychologist, explained the Veltar mindset to the tribunal. They developed a philosophy based on extreme social Darwinism. In their view, any species capable of being exterminated deserves extinction. But they showed tactical intelligence and strategic planning, observed Judge Kolvek, representing the Centauri Alliance. "How could beings capable of such thought consider genocide natural?" "Intelligence and wisdom are not the same thing," Dr. Clark replied. "The Veltar developed advanced technology while remaining morally primitive. They never learned that strength includes the power to show restraint." The defense attorneys appointed by the tribunal to ensure fair proceedings argued that the Veltar were following their cultural beliefs rather than acting from personal malice. They claimed their clients should be judged by their own moral standards, not those of other species. "Cultural relativism cannot excuse genocide," Prosecutor Stevens replied. "Every species represented in this courtroom recognizes the inherent wrong of systematic extermination. The defendants' beliefs do not justify their actions." The trial's most powerful moment came when recordings from extinct species were played for the tribunal. Dr. Nancy White, a human xenolinguist, had decoded final messages left by dying civilizations. "This is a transmission from the planet Rigel 7, recorded moments before Veltar biological weapons reached the capital city," she announced. The courtroom listened to alien voices speaking in languages that no longer existed anywhere in the universe. Parents saying goodbye to children, scientists making final observations, leaders calling for help that would never come. One message, translated from the Zektani language, particularly moved the tribunal. "We do not understand why they hate us. We offered no threat, sought no conflict. We only wanted to live and grow and learn. If anyone receives this, remember that we existed. Remember that we tried to be good." Judge Martinez ordered a recess as several observers broke down in tears. The voices of the dead had spoken more powerfully than any legal argument. When testimony concluded, the tribunal deliberated for 3 days. The evidence was overwhelming, but the judges wanted to ensure their decision would stand as precedent for future cases of interstellar genocide. On all charges of genocide, crimes against sentient species, and systematic extermination of intelligent life, Judge Martinez announced, "This tribunal finds the defendants guilty." The sentence was life imprisonment, but not in traditional facilities. Dr. Watson's team had developed a unique form of justice that would ensure the criminals understood the full scope of their crimes. "The defendants will be confined to specially designed vessels," the judge continued. "These ships will continuously broadcast the final moments of every species they eliminated. They will experience the terror and despair of their victims until their natural deaths." Zekmore showed his first sign of emotion at the sentence, his alien features twisting with what might have been fear. "You cannot do this. It violates the principle of proportional punishment. You eliminated entire civilizations," Judge Martinez replied. "You will spend the rest of your lives experiencing what your victims felt in their final moments. This is not revenge. This is education." The prison ships launched within a month, carrying their cargo of war criminals into deep space where they could harm no one else. The vessels were equipped with life support systems that would keep the prisoners alive for decades while they experienced the consequences of their actions. Meanwhile, human reconstruction teams worked across former Veltar territory, helping surviving populations rebuild their civilizations. The occupation was temporary, designed to ensure stable governments could form without Veltar military interference. Admiral Patricia Kane established her headquarters on the former Veltar capital world, coordinating the massive effort to document and preserve the cultures that had been destroyed. Museums were built to house artifacts from extinct civilizations. "We cannot bring back the dead," she told her staff, "but we can ensure they are remembered." The Galactic Memorial Project, led by Dr. Johnson and Dr. White, created permanent records of every extinct species. Their languages were preserved, their artwork cataloged, their scientific achievements documented for future generations. 5 years after the war's end, New Haven was rebuilt as a memorial world. Colony Director Kate Thompson oversaw a new settlement that included not just humans, but refugees from species the Veltar had targeted. The memorial wall in the colony's center bore the names of every person killed in the original attack. But it also carried names from 17 other species, billions of beings who had died in Veltar purification campaigns. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, found alive in a hidden bunker during the liberation of Veltar space, returned to New Haven to tend the memorial gardens. She had survived to see justice done, to witness the voices of the dead finally heard. "They tried to create silence," she said during the memorial dedication ceremony. "Instead, they created the loudest declaration of justice in galactic history." Children of multiple species played in those gardens, their laughter echoing where screams had once filled the air. Human children played alongside young Centauri, Altarian youngsters, and even some young Veltar whose parents had rejected their species' genocidal philosophy. The Deep Space Monitoring Network, commanded by Admiral Danny Foster from his base on Luna, scanned constantly for signs of genocide or systematic extermination. Humanity had appointed itself guardian of vulnerable species across the galaxy. "Never again," Admiral Foster said during the network's activation ceremony. "Not to anyone." The phrase became humanity's unofficial motto in the post-war galaxy. Human ships carried the message to every inhabited world. Genocide would not be tolerated, weakness would not be exploited, and silence would not be allowed to cover the screams of the innocent. President Webb, now in his second term, signed the Galactic Protection Accords that committed Earth's resources to defending species threatened with extinction. The document was also signed by 36 other civilizations who had witnessed humanity's response to the Veltar. "The universe is vast enough for all of us," he declared during the signing ceremony. "There is no need